Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. Hope you're all having an amazing day, and if you're not, I'm hoping this can really cheer you up. It's always a great day when we're talking about Ahsoka Season 2, and today we have some very exciting information coming from Sabine Wren herself, Natasha Liu Bordizzo, who at DragonCon 2024 at the Star Wars panel confirmed filming on the second season of Dave Filoni's story is going to begin in summer of 2025. After the Mandalorian and Grogu movies finish filming. So that means we're about a year away from production, and if we just do the math, it means we're not going to see Ahsoka Season 2 on Disney Plus until mid, or let's be real, late 2026, after the Jon Favreau movie at the earliest. Therefore, the current order of upcoming New Republic projects is Skeleton Crew this coming December, The Mandalorian and Grogu May 2026, unless that gets moved, and then Ahsoka Season 2. So 3 years between seasons. Why does that sound familiar? Oh yeah, we waited a similar amount of time between The Mandalorian's second and third seasons, although there were very understandable reasons for why. And you know, I'd rather they took their time with Ahsoka, prioritized quality, rather than pushing out content just for release on a certain date. But my only wish for the second season, other than of course maintaining quality, is longer episodes. We need it. It also means 2025 is going to be a pretty dry year for Mando content. Not to worry though, because we have other projects like Andor Season 2 to keep us entertained. Oh, and by the way, when are we gonna finally hear an update on the third volume of Visions? It is pretty awesome to get some actual news from one of the actresses on the show in what was otherwise a pretty tame panel. It's really not the typical usual place for an update like this, where the actress just spills the beans, but you gotta love it. And I'm very excited for what's next in Sabine's story, especially now that we find ourselves in a very interesting predicament where Sabine is a changed, and some would say evolved character. She now has the Force, and is a Jedi. I wasn't the biggest fan of this decision, but there is no doubt her abilities are going to come in handy now that her and Ahsoka are facing some pretty large dark side threats on Peridea. Now look, I've got to be honest, you've probably noticed an uptick on my channel in Ahsoka videos recently, and part of it is because I've wanted to focus on the future of Star Wars that I'm excited about, and the prospect of Ahsoka Season 2, the kind of story Dave has set up, is 100% the kind of Star Wars I love. And you mix that in with the kind of suspense and tension that Baylan brings with him. I know we don't have Ray Stevenson anymore, but the high stakes that Filoni set up with Ahsoka and Sabine going after him, it brings with it a certain thrill, uncovering a certain conspiracy, potentially preventing a catastrophic event, diving headfirst into dark side force powers that potentially Ahsoka Tano has never come across. Our protagonists engaging in a detailed search, gathering clues, piecing together information to find out what Baylan is doing. I don't think the setup for the second season gets enough credit, but to my mind that is one of the most exciting things Lucasfilm is doing at the moment. But returning to Natasha, the panel also included Manny Jacinto, Chimera / the stranger from the Acolyte, and once again, he's calling for an Acolyte Season 2. He was asked if there is anything else he wants to achieve in this quote, mortal coil, and he flat out responded, Season 2 of the Acolyte. Danny Trejo, the unnamed Rancor trainer from the Book of Boba Fett. Seriously, we need this guy's name. Natasha Liu, and finally Giancarlo Esposito, Moff Gideon. Is he really dead? I suppose we'll find out in 2026. And with this news, it's worth keeping in mind, when they were filming the first season, Dave Filoni admitted he already knew the general gist of the second season and already started writing quite a lot of it. And you've got to wonder how much of it depends on the Mandalorian and Grogu, Skeleton Crew, reintroducing elements of the cancelled Rangers of the New Republic. As exciting as this news is, it's important to keep in mind production dates do shift. But with Natasha's confirmation, it seems like the wheels are already in motion for Ahsoka's second season. Fans had long been waiting for an update on this, so it's good news to know there is something of a concrete timeline for when we can expect the show to begin filming. I also just want to highlight, one of the things Natasha said she is most looking forward to is working with Ivana Sakno again, Shin Hati, and Natasha says, quote, I loved working with Ivana so much. We really went through the whole journey from start to finish. We got to know one another through working in the training facility, and we got to put focus and dedication to our craft and lightsaber combat. Season 2 is no doubt going to see much of the same, with the 4 Force users stuck in the second galaxy: Ahsoka, Sabine, Shin, and Baylan. If anything, there's going to be more lightsaber combat in Season 2, but again, I think this largely depends on the motivations of Shin and which path she goes down. And Bordizzo confirmed there is something of an interesting mirror parallel between Sabine and Shin, almost like the destinies of these two characters are bound, but simultaneously binary opposites. The characters are yin and yang, and so while Shin rejected Ahsoka's truce, are they going to remain enemies for a little while longer, before ultimately uniting, and all 3 of them are going to face Baylan as one uniting force? Questions which only Filoni holds the answers to. In other Star Wars news, this is a very interesting topic I came across. I've spoken in great detail about the cancellation of the Acolyte and how it bears on other new projects, and there seems to be a sentiment, especially amongst Acolyte fans, I'm not one of them, that based on the negative reviews for the Acolyte, Lucasfilm is going to take less risks. The worry which I've seen, which I want to debunk, is that Star Wars is going to rethink its approach to James Mangold's film, Dawn of the Jedi, going 25,000 years in the past and exploring the origins of the Jedi Order. And the notion is that because the Acolyte did something different, that's why it wasn't liked. I've already explained why it's a misrepresentation and a myth. How Star Wars fans have reacted positively to new changes, but only when they're good, when it warrants the Star Wars name. It's insane to me when people think the reason fans didn't like the Acolyte was because of when it took place, because they introduced some new concepts. That wasn't the issue. Where the worry might be justified is if Lucasfilm interprets the low viewership and critical response as fans being opposed to new periods of the timeline. That would be a disastrous assumption. Another way this could have adverse effects is if Dawn of the Jedi ends up being a very good movie, but maybe due to low viewership, any possible sequels are abandoned, as well as the storylines of certain characters. And to this extent, I do feel for those fans who did enjoy the Acolyte, because they may never get a continuation for those characters like Chimera. So from that point of view, I agree. But I don't know why some fans of the show are pointing the finger at fans who didn't like it and saying you just don't like risk and change. Those weren't the issues. But here's what was said in this particular piece. Sadly, the promise of the Acolyte is never going to be fulfilled. Though the first season was divisive, there was potential for more. Now that the Acolyte has been officially cancelled, the first live-action Star Wars show to face this fate, as the Book of Boba Fett is technically still in limbo, it's made me question how Star Wars will move forward in the future, and whether the franchise is truly brave enough to give audiences something entirely new. In fact, I'm worried about one upcoming Star Wars production in particular, the most exciting the franchise has announced in recent years. And the question is basically this: are Star Wars audiences ready for Dawn of the Jedi? The concept of going back 25,000 years, even by the same title, has been explored in Star Wars Legends, and it is some of the strongest storytelling from the EU. But is the general audience ready for such a risk? James Mangold said the film is going to be the 10 Commandments of the Jedi Order, going back to their origins, how they set out their rules. I don't know if they're going to use the expanded universe material, I don't know if we're going to see them separate from the Jedi Order, and I don't know if they're going to focus on the Ashla, the Bogan, and other pre-established Force concepts. But regardless, it's got to be a thrilling movie, both visually and in the narrative. And you know, by its very nature, this movie is going to be nothing like the Skywalker saga. But is the general audience ready? I definitely think so, even the way it's being described, as a biblical epic in space. And in a sense, it's got an advantage over the Acolyte, because while the Acolyte was also new territory, it stepped on the toes of the pre-Phantom Menace world, a period of time where we know certain characters are in motion, they'll have an impact on certain individuals around during the prequel trilogy, so the Acolyte wasn't entirely divorced. But when you're going back to the foundation of the Order, imperfections amongst the Jedi, immorality and mistakes are kind of expected, so they do have a bit more breathing room. So even though in the same way the Acolyte did, this movie is taking a new risk, going into unexplored territory, it's also a much more exciting prospect. And in a way, with this movie nowhere near starting production, with no scripts at the moment, if, and a big if, Disney and Lucasfilm learn from their mistakes, that could be a positive step for this movie. And you know what, guys? It doesn't even matter, because at the end of the day, we don't know when the James Mangold movie is coming out, if it ever does. How many movies have been announced that we've never heard of ever again afterwards? And if Kathleen Kennedy does step down before this film does go into production, it might be scrapped under new management, or indefinitely delayed. What do you guys think? Share your thoughts on this. The the Ahsoka news and everything else we spoke about in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.